welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where we take a look at movies from our pasts. If you're looking through the list of films we've done and thinking, dear, that's a lot of podcasts from the 80s and 90s. Guess when we were born. Yeah, it's a lot of movies from the 80s and 90s. These are the movies we grew up with, mostly, with some scattered exceptions. This week, for our sort of just before Christmas episode, we are doing that famous Christmas movie because Shane Black was involved in writing it, therefore it has Christmas. Lethal Weapon. Now, we'll have the debate of is it a Christmas movie later on. No doubt it involves Christmas. Lots of Christmas in the movie. But, you know, Christmas being present does not a Christmas movie make, I should say. So we'll come back to that. Do you have any, other than the I know we watched, therefore you watched the series a few years ago when that was running. Other than the series, do you have any sort of, history with this film, Lethal Weapon?
No, none. No, I've never seen it. I like you say, watched the TV show for the podcast, but no, I never actually then watched the movie series. I remember seeing the poster a lot, and I remember being quite, as a kid, intrigued that there were 4 movies. Mm-hmm. I found that quite exciting. Talked a lot about a love of franchises and mythology building.
Yes.
So I remember being very like, ooh. But yeah, no, I'd never actually seen it before. What about yourself?
Yes. So this is another one of the films that I saw because my nana worked at a video shop, so it was very much every time I went and visited, I'd walk away with some sort of movie. And eventually, at some point, funnily enough, I don't think it was the first one I saw first. I think I'm reasonably convinced I saw the third one first. I'm not certain of that, but let's think. Because Joe Pesci's in the third one. I think he might actually be also in the second one, but he's on the cover on the third one. I always remember this cover. It's the two of them back to back holding guns, in all serious, and he's like peeking through between them, like. What? And I just remember as a kid being like, that seems kind of funny. Look, there's 2 serious policemen and like a goofy guy in the middle. And so I'm sure I saw the third one first. It's not the only franchise I did that with. I also think I saw the third Beverly Hills Cop first.
I saw, after watching this, I saw the trailer for Lethal Weapon 2, and I think Joe Pesci is in it because he pops up in that. But he pops up in the trailer in very like a small, like, oh, Joe Pesci's in this film. And then it auto played the trailer for 4, and that trailer is like, Joe Pesci, he's in all of them from this after this one, I think. Right. I suspect he's in a smaller role in 2, but people responded well to it, so then he gets a bigger role as the next 2 go on. Because then, and I know spoilers for a film we're not even talking about here, right? But I have to know, right? The Lethal Weapon 4 trailer ends with Chris Rock saying, I'm Mel Gibson, I just look a little different, or something like that. Is that in the movie? Does he refer to himself as Mel? I don't remember that being in the movie.
That's hilarious. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question, I'm afraid, because I don't recall that line at all. That's amazing, though.
Yeah, watch the trailer. It's quite a weird trailer. It starts with quite a long scene, and then it goes into the clips, and it ends with that. It's very bizarre.
My memory is there was a bit of a gap between 3 and 4. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. It certainly looks like it.
I just looked at it. So 3 is 92. I just pulled up the franchise page as I was talking. 4 is 98. Now, I reckon 4 was another one that I saw through, working, helping out my nana and hanging out at the video store, I think.
So hold on. So what year did 2 come out?
2. Good question. I went off that page. Bear with me. So that's 3. Where's 2? Oh damn! I went off the page.
I'm trying to ascertain whether 2 came out.
1989. So it's 87,
So
89, 92. So there's like 2 to 3 years between each one of these, and then the third one, the fourth one. Sorry, which is a bit of a gap.
So 2, which is why if I so choose it, we've done as well as trilogies. We've done quadrilogies before.
Yes.
We've done little franchises before with Indiana Jones. So get ready, possibly. So in that case, Lethal Weapon 2 did come out before Home Alone, right? So maybe that's also it. Maybe that's the Joe Pesci hype has increased.
Right, yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe it's like pre-Home Alone, post-Home Alone, especially Joe Pesci in a slightly comedic role. I can see that.
But back to this movie. So you probably watched it out of order.
So I probably watched them out of order, but I really enjoyed them. I don't think they ever really had the place in my heart that the Die Hard films did. And these films are weirdly linked to Die Hard in a couple of different ways. Very quickly, Bruce Willis auditioned for both roles, both Riggs and McClane, and McClane, sorry, and so did Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson also was up for McClane and Riggs. And they're both produced by Joel Silver. They both have the same guy doing the music. The script for Die Hard 3 was nearly a Lethal Weapon script. So it's these two franchises have a lot in common. That they're both action comedies that have Christmas for the first one.
They really were just finding replacing on the script for Die Hard 3, weren't they? Because it was originally another movie as well, wasn't it? And
so
then it's potentially a Lethal Weapon movie.
I stand by the fact I think it's the reason why Die Hard 3 is actually really good, is that it's literally its own movie. So it was written as a film called Simon Says, which was just an action movie that had two heroes go on this very unusual adventure, which I'm sure you've already seen. You've seen 3, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Yeah. I did. Jess and I did a thing where we watched them all.
That's right. I remember
this.
During
lockdown.
So we not covered it on the podcast yet, but we will probably get to it. But it's it was called Simon Says, and then there was like the discussion was, this is a good script, but can we sell this? And the discussion then became, what if we just turned it into a sequel, like used the same script, but turned it into a sequel to another movie we had? Lethal Weapon was one of the options. Die Hard was one of the options. And eventually they landed on making it a Die Hard movie, made the lead John McClane. You can sort of see the bones of a Murtaugh potentially in the Samuel L. Jackson character, in the sort of like slightly reluctant to be pulled along element of that character. He's dragged into that situation the way you might imagine a Murtaugh would be. So you can sort of see how it would have fit in either camp. So yeah, I these two franchises are weirdly tied together. I've always preferred the Die Hard franchise. I think the action is better in those movies. And we'll get into also stakes later when we talk about this film, because there is some issues in the third act.
I think, so we'll get into reviews now. And look, I think we would both definitely recommend this movie. Like, it's a good, easy watch. It's it's a fun action movie, and fundamentally, No, you go.
No,
you go.
Well, I was just gonna say, and I think like there are so many iconic sequences in this movie that are on their own, even without the rest of the movie, really fun to watch. Like individual scenes that almost play out like little mini movies of their own. So it really comes together quite well. Like especially the first sort of like hour-ish of the movie is great.
But I think it has become a classic because of the lead performances by Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, both of which are individually fantastic and together stunning. And I do, and maybe I'm wrong because obviously I'm coming at this without nostalgia, and maybe this is controversial, but I feel like without those two guys, without the pure 100% charisma that they are oozing all over this, I don't think it would have spawned a franchise and become the success it has.
No, I'd agree.
I think so much of it is pinned on their charm.
Yeah, and we should probably say outright up top, obviously, Mel Gibson, bad bloke. Like, He's working on himself and all that jazz. But never easy to tell whether that's PR or real. But we have enough evidence that Mel Gibson not the greatest person, or at least certainly wasn't. And I know that there's going to be it's going to be weird to be praising a person that is in the sort of situation he's been in the last few years and got the reputation he's got. But here's the thing: it would be absolutely false. It would be a lie to say that having watched this film, Mel Gibson's not fucking great in it. Because
it was because I haven't seen Braveheart, and
right.
I've seen What Women Want, and I actually really like What Women Want. I don't know if it would hold up as a movie now, but as in my younger days, I remember enjoying What Women Want. So this was a revelation. I was like, oh fucking hell, Mel Gibson can really act well.
And annoyingly, and really annoyingly, he's also a reasonably good director. Like, I remember watching, what's his one that he did with Andrew Garfield? The war one. And that was it's going to kill me.
Oh, no, wait. Let me see if it begins with H. Hacksaw Ridge?
Hacksaw Ridge, exactly, yes. Yeah. Well remembered. That's an incredible movie. And Signs, he's amazing in Signs. And I remember watching his sort of what was at the time set to be his comeback movie, The Beaver, about a man who has a psychological break and has this beaver puppet on his hand that he talks to, and he won't take off, and that directed by, I think, Jodie Foster, that film. And I remember watching that and being like, he's so good in this. I kind of hate that he's good at this, So yeah, he is extremely talented, regardless of your feelings on the man and his. Well, let's be honest. The phone calls, I think, are the big one for a lot of people. The whole sugar tits thing and all that stuff. Not great. It's not good, but hey ho. And obviously, Mad Max as well. How could we forget Mad Max? When we're talking about the man's career. So he's done a lot of good stuff, and this is definitely included. I would say this is absolutely a highlight. This is such a unique performance, and for the time, you can talk all you like about what was so amazing about Die Hard was that John McClane seemed like a regular man, right? Neither of these two seem like regular men at all, but they do each have something that I don't think you saw in a lot of these kind of movies prior. I think that dark edge, particularly they give to Riggs, that whole on the verge of just, not caring about his life, not quite being, suicidal in the direct sense, but is willing to risk his life in his work because he's so close to being suicidal that if he dies on the job protecting someone, then fine. That's his perspective is that's okay. So he takes risks that he otherwise wouldn't. And then the genius of teaming him up with Danny Glover, who is doing an absolutely incredible job playing the sort of family man that has so much to live for, that's being dragged along by this guy that's, not being as careful about his life, it's such a good combination. The performances from both of them are absolutely kinetic. It's just they're the way they bounce off each other as well. It's not just two good individual performances. It's they just lock into something really magical. And I honestly think you're 100% right. Without them, this doesn't become the franchise it becomes. 100%. Because it's just something to do with the way they interact. I can't even explain it. It's some sort of acting wizardry. I don't know.
You know what? And I don't know if it's just because I'm fucking and take a shot, because I think this has come up on a lot of podcasts because we've recorded a lot of podcasts in a small time frame. I don't know if it's just because I'm doing a play that's a two-hander and this kind of shit's on my mind, but there are scenes in this that just it feels like you're watching two actors on stage. Do you know what I mean by that? It feels like you're watching a play. In the moments where it's like, are you crazy? And he does, and Mel Gibson's like, and does all the. It's so. And sometimes this movie is not afraid to pause for the dialogue, which for an action movie, especially comparatively to what is essentially a buddy cop action movie, like if this movie's being made now, fucking hell, we're action sequence, quip. Right. This movie's not afraid to just pause and do quite real dialogue that isn't necessarily hilarious, isn't necessarily full of suspense and action. It's just dialogue, and I think that's what makes some scenes in this feel like a play to me.
And I think good dialogue too. It's not just that it is taking the time to do it. It's like really sharp dialogue, like God hates me, hate him back, it works for me. That's an amazing line. That is an amazing line. Yeah. And then even down to like the casual banter, which is like, you ever meet anybody you didn't kill? Which is just an amazing line, delivered brilliantly by Danny Glover. And I nearly made a joke there. I was like, famously Donald Glover's father. But I think that joke has been run into the ground by now, right?
I might have preferred to him as Donny Glover earlier for that reason, and not Danny.
Very good. So I think the dialogue is great, and I think the film, I think what this film has maybe over a Die Hard, and it doesn't beat Die Hard, but the one thing it does do better.
Let's not be silly here, Dan. Jesus.
Exactly. But the one thing it does, I think, do better than Die Hard, if we're categorizing, if there's like 10 categories of things, Die Hard is winning in like 8 or 9 of them, but the one that this one wins in is, I do think, the characterization. These two guys, we spend a lot more time getting to know them than we ever really do getting to know McClane. McClane is thrust into the action. There aren't as many moments for pause and actual conversations. We're not seeing any element of his life outside of the incident he's involved in, because the whole thing takes place across that one night, across that one incident. This movie takes place over several days, in which we get these beats.
We're certainly very informed, though, of his status with Holly, and they've got the scene at the beginning, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just chucking that defense
100%. And it's not that the movie doesn't try, but I would say being told about something and being shown something, unfortunately, being shown it is always going to be a more effective way to make you understand it, right? We can be told through dialogue what his relationship with Holly is. He gets a brief scene or two to interact with her across that whole movie. We don't really see it, So same with his kids. We know he cares for his kids. We don't see him interact with them, So it's like it loses something. Whereas here, you've got the stark contrast between Riggs in his trailer, watching Three Stooges, loading that one bullet into that gun, and understanding where he's at. And then we have those quieter moments. Well, not even quiet. Those sort of fun but chaotic moments of Murtaugh in his family home, where his family are like, giving him shit about his beard and looking old, and it's all that stuff, and even down to weird little details, like where the wife says keep an eye, don't slip on any egg. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, that's on me. I should have been checking the floor for egg, And it's like these weird little, very human moments, small, very small, but they stack. They stack to create a picture of these two men, and they are characterized, I think, by the end of the movie better than McClane is. I think. Now, admittedly, that is that is pretty much where the being over I think it's Star Wars for some reason. I don't know why. Die Hard ends. That's where that's where Die Hard just takes over. Every other element now, if we're talking about the music, the humor, the action, all the rest of it, Die Hard winning. But that doesn't mean this film doesn't do some of that stuff well. But Die Hard, from there on in my opinion, in all the other areas, he's killing it. I don't know.
So let's talk about some of that, because I think it's a big part of why I think it pins itself on the relationship between the characters and the performance of that relationship. And as you have pointed out, the witty dialogue as well, because otherwise, and there's some great action sequences, and we do sort of have an exciting incident every 10 pages or whatever. But it is funny because it just doesn't. Everything else in terms of to some degree, the pacing in terms of, you got a film where the part of the linchpin is these two people don't get along and they've been forced together. But actually, the scene where Riggs goes round for dinner and they basically bond from that point onwards happens pretty early in the movie.
I was wondering about that. At what point in the film does that happen? Because I had the exact same question in my head. I'll pull it up. Bear with me. Yeah, I agree with you. I love that scene, though. That's one of my favourite scenes in the whole movie.
Yes,
it's an incredible scene. Because it's like, we've seen how sad his life is, It's kind of tragic. So let's have a look. The movie is an hour and 45 minutes long, and that scene, I've got it here at 45 minutes into the movie. So there's still roughly an hour left of the movie when he's at the dinner table with the kids.
And so it seems like that happens early, and we sort of to dive into, I think actually what is the linchpin of a lot of the movie being in, I hate to say it, but being in some ways like solid as opposed to amazing. Like the character work is amazing. The rest of the movie, for me, watching it was good. The rest of the movie was like, it's a solid film, like it's good. Yeah. But if it weren't for the characters, I wouldn't have looked up a trailer for the second one. Like, and I think
you do get attached to Riggs and Murtaugh for sure.
Yeah, and they insanely overshadow the villain, and I think there's sort of two issues with the villain plot. Mm-hmm. One is the actual villains themselves, and I couldn't tell you their names, Dan. I couldn't tell you their names. I could barely tell you. One was pretending to be the daughter's boyfriend. Maybe that's theorized. It's never clarified.
No, I think also, they murder the daughter's boyfriend to kidnap the daughter.
Right. Okay, and it's just the description that makes him think of it.
Because it's round the corner. So he's listening. The police radio is just doing that, and all units respond to this situation, and he realizes it's 2 streets over from his house, and then he sort of almost jokingly is like, let me guess, a guy with dimples, because he's referring to his daughter's boyfriend, and like, how did you know that's the victim? And then because the daughter was obviously round with the boyfriend when she was kidnapped, the boyfriend got in the way, got murdered. That's the assumption that the movie makes. Right. But yeah, so we have two. We have Joshua played by Gary Busey, and then we have sort of the general played by Mitchell Ryan. Now the problem here is that one of them is very much on screen a lot, but he's actually just a merc for the big guy who was really not involved in that much. It's hard to invest in either villain. That's the issue, in my opinion.
And I don't think either the sort of, they're not really solving anything. The mystery of what happens, they just sort of like, it's not answered, and then they go to a guy who basically just, Murtaugh's friend, who the dad of the woman who's been killed, and he just sort of explains. He just sort of says, "Oh, well, this is happening." There's no discovery. There's no detective work, really, in a way. Even though it seems on the surface like there's a lot of detective work.
No, they stumble into the answers very much so.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the sort of the bad guy side of it, the key linchpin to the plot is a bit weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree, because I think the issue you've got is. So the mystery itself is pretty straightforward. So it starts with a very, very well shot, almost too artful to be in this movie scene. In fact, there's a few scenes like that in this movie where I just gotta say the visuals of this movie do not need to go as hard as they do. Richard Donner, an incredible director, obviously just pulled together some incredible stuff. Like there's an amazing shot later in the movie when we've got Murtaugh in the desert waiting for the bad guys to show up, and there's this incredible sort of rebel ship versus the Empire moment where it's just this one man in the desert, and then in the background, he's in the foreground. In the background, there's the soft focus, desert haze, shifted visuals of a helicopter and trucks and stuff coming towards him, and it's just an incredible shot. And I was just watching this shot like, damn movie, why go so hard on this shot? This shot doesn't need this.
this is insane. But also, the opening of the movie is a young girl falling from a window, pushed. You're not sure. You don't know it's not pushed. You see her drop. But, like, you know, there's this incredible, artful shot of this young girl dying or falling to her death. And the initial premise is we're investigating a murder, but it becomes clear the more they investigate it, the more that the people they're trying to talk to keep getting killed around them, that they start to realize that clearly she may have been murdered because she knew something. What did she know? What was the least interesting answer to that question? She knew about some crime ring. That's it. It's that simple. And then the crime ring guys try to get to Murtaugh and Riggs, and because Riggs doesn't have a family, they go after Murtaugh. It's the same way they went off after the young girl. Because her dad was directly involved in their crimes, basically. So you're right; it's not a very interesting plot.
Which also in itself is like,
yeah,
the dad at the beginning, like, you gotta find her, you gotta find who murdered my girl and kill him. Well, you know who murdered. Like, what do you mean? He's got, like, because you're gonna know, mate, as you say later on, you're gonna know that doing this is gonna potentially lead to your death. So just tell him outright. Like, your best bet is surely to just be like, right, I'm involved in this, and it's this. Could you go get him, and I'm going to run away with my other daughter and the rest of my family.
I wondered about that. I think I have a fan explanation. It's not great. But he's so at the beginning of the movie, Murtaugh nearly ends up taking a call from this guy, right? Michael Huntsacker, I think he's called, and he's like, "Oh, he's just an old buddy of mine from the military or whatever. I haven't spoken to him in years." Then his daughter dies, and Murtaugh comes to him and says, "Well, what did you try and call me about that morning?" And the guy's like, so my daughter's into some dodgy stuff, and I just wanted you find the guys that killed her. You find them, because I think he's covering for himself at that point. Because keep in mind, he says later on, "I have another daughter. Once they killed my daughter, I'm clamming up about the police. But you already had a dead daughter, and were going to talk to me. So I feel like that story, that whole you find the creeps who did this. You know, they got her into some weird shit, and then she ended up dying. That is, I think, a front, because he's now scared of revealing the real reason he was calling Danny Glover at the beginning of the movie, because he's scared about his second daughter. So that's why I think he tells that lie there. It does sort of track,
right? Yeah.
If you think of it from that perspective, but that is fan splitting. The film never outright explains that. So we go back to that age-old debate of, you know, is there enough information there for you to put it together yourself? Yeah, I think so. Does the movie need to make it more explicit? Maybe it could help a little bit there. But, you know, I don't need everything to be spelled out for me. But maybe that's one of those things that, because I also wondered why that scene existed when we get the reveal later in the movie. So there's definitely, you know, a question mark on whether they handled that as well as they could have, because we both have the same thought, which tells me maybe they could have done at least a little more to nudge us in the direction of the answer there.
Talk to me, because I imagine this is tied into all of this. You referenced earlier the steaks. Talk to me about steaks, Dan.
Oh, God. Yeah.
What do you like? You like medium rare? You like day aged? What's your...
I am a medium rare guy. Nadia is full on blue.
See, I'm medium rare with a leaning more towards blue than like, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I would like my medium rare the side of rare as opposed to medium.
And I'm good with that. Give me a nice pink line through the middle of the steak. I'm on board.
Yeah.
On board. Nadia basically wants it to still be mooing when it reaches the table.
Yeah. I find that quite chewy, if I'm honest.
Oh, also, a little tip for any travellers out there. If you go to France and you ask for a medium rare, it will be as close to blue as you could imagine getting before it's called blue. Their version of medium rare is way more rare than what you'd get in a restaurant in most of the countries.
Was it
so
way
maybe
more
just
rare
ask
than you were
for medium. What was that, sir?
Was it more rare than you were comfortable with?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? How it feels fine when you're eating a steak though, but if you eat a burger that's proper rare, it feels weird. Even though
you're not supposed to do that with a burger, because with a burger, even though it is more delicious, it's minced meat. So it's not sealed. The reason you can do it with a steak is because the outside of the steak is the bit that's been exposed to the air, and therefore it's been seared and is. But when it's a burger, it's made of mince, and that mince has all been exposed to the air. So you're not supposed to do it with a burger.
Right. Well, I meant more medium rare with the burger, but yeah.
But no, you're not supposed to have any amount of rare in a burger. In theory, you can get quite sick from a burger that's genuinely got the that. But the restaurants still do it that way anyway. But I think there's been talk of laws coming in for years about that. Go on, sorry.
What about steak tartare?
Yeah, same problem.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Shit.
Yeah, it's risky.
I've never had steak tartare. That seems like a way too big a step for me.
That's a Nadia. That's a Nadia special. Again,
she likes steak tartare.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. God.
Yeah.
She's a bit like fancy when it comes to her restaurant choices, isn't she?
She can be.
Yeah.
She can be.
Wow. Fair.
But
that's not criticism.
Yeah. Just it's just money. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, is that what that was? Oh, your She Can Be was not directed at me at all.
No, she can be.
I thought you were getting defensive.
No. It's one of those things where it's like, if it's a when in Rome thing. I think is the way to describe that.
Why? Anyway. How do they do their steaks in Rome? I thought you told us about France. You didn't mention Rome.
I remember when we were in Japan, and I got like a really top tier. It was so much money, but it was like a big it was a wagyu steak or some special kind of steak that's like top incredible tip. The place we got it from also does a thing called okonomiyaki, which is like one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my entire life. It's a sort of pancake, but with there were prawns in that thing. It was nuts. I've never seen anything like it, and they make it in front of you. It's insane. And I just remember thinking, here I am with my steak, and there's Nadia eating her okonomiyaki, and I'm just thinking, I am not a very adventurous eater. It's lucky we find restaurants that do both of these things.
I thought you were going to say, I imagine Nadia had that fish that if it's not cooked in a certain way would kill you.
Oh, the blowfish. Yeah, no. She's not very... actually, her adventurous food eating, it does stop at fish. She doesn't like things that are fishy. She's not a big seafood person, truthfully. She'll eat a little bit, but she doesn't go for it. But yeah, we had that in Osaka while we were there. It's famous. It's from Osaka originally, okonomiyaki. So that's where we were when we ate it. But anyway, back to the movie, Chris. So yeah, I think there are some issues with the steaks. That's how this started. I remember very much so last night, Chris. You were very clear about today's recording and not involving tangents. So I'm just going to point out that you took us on the steak tangent. That was all you, buddy.
Yeah, but that was before I'd seen Lethal Weapon, and then I saw Lethal Weapon, and I was like, "Oh, it's fine. We can't talk about this film for 2 hours. I was less worried about that once I'd seen the film."
Yeah, I had a feeling that might be the case. I didn't want to say that because I don't want to give you expectations about the film's depth, but yeah, I was thinking the same. Yeah. But anyway, because I'd already seen the film, we had that conversation. So yeah, I think there's an issue because essentially you're solving the murder of a young girl. And then at the midpoint of the movie, we figure out that the young girl's who exactly killed the young girl. And then it just becomes about the bad guys are trying to silence Riggs and Murtaugh through either murder or kidnapping family members. And there's a reasonable... The stakes shift, but there are stakes when the daughter, whose character name I've forgotten... I think... Is it Rianne? I think it's Rianne. Played by Tracy Wolf, who does a great job in this movie, by the way. She's very good. She's the whole family, actually. I should clarify. Is it Darlene Love, who plays Trish? Amazing as well. I don't have the names of the actors that played the kids, but they're all really good. But yeah, so Rianne gets kidnapped, and there are plenty of stakes. But then they, not immediately, but pretty soon thereafter, get her back. And then it's an escape. The stakes shift again to they have to escape because they've been kidnapped by them. And then it becomes, and the final sort of
sort of situational stakes is they've gone to the house. They've gone after Trish Murtaugh. And you think, oh, we're gonna get a tense sort of like the end of Die Hard. We're gonna get them. Hans Gruber has Holly, and it's how do they get out of this one? But then we cut to the bad guy arriving at the house, and they've set up a trap for him, and they just catch him. Well, at least they should just catch him. Except one of the most insane choices a script I've ever seen have. I know, let's end the movie on a tensionless fight with no stakes, because even if the bad guy wins, he'll be arrested by the 600 cops that are watching this fight play out. What is the point of that scene, Chris?
I watched it. I'd watched it last night. I watched it last night. I'd forgotten all about that. That's such a weird. And at this point as well, like it's like fucking 2:30 a.m. in the morning for me at this point when I'm watching this going, and I'm just sat there literally going, have I missed some setup for this? Right. And I'm asking you, Dad, I didn't look it up. Right, okay, so there was no sort of, because obviously they were both in the special, no, the other guy was in the special forces, I can't remember. But like, but I was like, did they briefly, when they had that exchange, set up that they had a fight or both thought they were brilliant at like martial arts? I was like, what the fuck is this?
But the answer is they were both special forces. Apparently, that's enough reason for this to happen. And it's like they try to cover it with a line of dialogue where the police are closing in and Murtaugh says, no, this is his arrest. But why they've thrown down their like and decide to have a fucking Krav Maga fight? Why they implement 5 different martial arts?
Why the other police wouldn't be like, nah, Murtaugh, this is fucking stupid, mate.
Yeah, but also, like, why? I'm not invested in that fight and who wins it, though. That's the bigger problem. If you want to tell me, right, oh, this is saying something about the characters, that that at the end of the day, he's got to overcome this himself and without weapons, with his hands, Okay, I'll go with that. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, but fine, okay. What I can't get my head around is even if we're going along with and the police agree to that because they have so much respect for Riggs, right? Let's just say that you've convinced me of all of those things, which are also problems, by the way. I'm not dismissing those. I'm just saying, just in theory. Let's say you get me on board with all of that. What you can't get me on board with is that the fight still has no stakes because he's caught. There are 600 fucking police officers with guns there. No matter who wins that fight, it doesn't matter. It's just a fucking dick measuring contest at that point.
I assume, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, I assume their logic was, when like the creators' logic was, the stakes is he could kill Riggs.
Could he? With his bare hands? You don't think the police would step in if he started trying to kill Riggs? Like, actually kill him?
Like, I don't know. We saw Riggs kill a guy with his legs.
But what I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is, if he's surrounded by 600 police officers, which is obviously not the actual number. I'm being facetious, but there's dozens, if not 100, police officers around him. If he started to actually strangle him or get a knife to his throat or anything like that, if you don't think Murtaugh or the police officers aren't stepping in, you're out of your mind. So there's just
I'm not saying I'm not saying they were right, but I'm saying that has to be the people that made that decision's logic, because otherwise it feels like it's just like, oh well, Mel's learned martial arts. Yeah. All right, well.
So this is the problem, I think, with the end of the movie and stakes in general, is the stakes shift twice. No, they shift. Well, there's 3 different sort of setups for the last 45 minutes of the movie. One is daughter kidnapped, rescue daughter, which they do the least interesting thing they could do, which is they do a me out in the desert, I'll give you the stuff, you give me my daughter sort of situation. It's not that, because there's no stuff to give. It's like they want him, but they're in it for the information. Then that goes sideways for everyone pretty much. And they all 3 of them get captured. So the stakes, before you even got settled into, this is about rescuing the daughter, which makes the most sense thematically, because this started with him trying to
to avenge the sort of death of a friend's daughter. Now his daughter is in that same situation with those exact same crooks. So it's way more personal, but it's the exact same situation. They got at him through his daughter. Don't worry about that though. There's 5-10 minutes at max that's actually the problem, and then the problem shifts again, and now it's that they're kidnapped. Why these criminals haven't just shot them, and all three of them in the head, and dumped them in the river, I do not know. They've proven themselves very willing to murder to protect this. Half the people they were going to question at the beginning of the movie that might have information about the situation were murdered on the spot, either shot from a distance or let's not forget, exploded. So they're not exactly subtle, these guys, and they're absolutely willing to kill people with no information. So why they're keeping Riggs and Murtaugh alive? This flimsy excuse of they want to find out how much they know and who they told. Come on. So
yeah, it's bollocks.
It just feels very flimsy. Fine, okay, let's go with that. But the situation has changed again. So now we're in escape mode because they've all been kidnapped by the bad guys. They're all getting out. Then it switches to a chase because they have escaped, but the criminals are scattered, so they're chasing the criminals. And then it becomes, oh no, they've gone for my house, which turns out to be a nothing. That's a nothing burger. They've gone to my house because when they get there, they've already gotten there first, and they've set up a little trap for him. Which, by the way, if you're going to set up a trap for a criminal, how about just hide around a corner and pull a gun on him? You do not need to crash a car through your house's front, like, main windows. It's fun for a scene. It's fun for the scene, but realistically, there's a part of me that goes, would Murtaugh have agreed to this? This seems excessive because it's one man. It's one man, and you've already safely evacuated, the wife and kids. So maybe just wait round a corner. So when he comes in, you just point a gun at his head. It's less exciting, but it makes more sense.
It does make way more sense.
So for me, for me, the whole last act of this movie doesn't really work. That's what I'm getting to. There, at no point does it. The one thing that's the most interesting, which is the first thing, which is kidnapped daughter, is forgotten about almost immediately, and then the stakes keep shifting in a way that I just didn't find very interesting. That's me. Go on.
I didn't mind Captured Daughter because I did think, like, especially when they get to the desert and there's tons of them, and obviously only two of
it just doesn't. They just don't stick with it for very long.
No. Just going back to the martial arts fight, I think the other problem with it, and again, it's a central problem with the villains in general, is like we said earlier, they're so thin that's also why you're not invested. Because like, if Riggs and this guy did have a backstory, if there was some sort of deep-rooted resentment, if this was a rematch, if there was any depth to that character, then suddenly it would have stakes. You look at like Captain America Civil War, principally, structurally, spoilers, that ends in a similar way. There's a big fight sequence. Now, again, we could argue that none of the sequences, there's an action sequence. None of the action sequences in Lethal Weapon are actually that sort of big, but there is still the desert thing. There is still the torture stuff. There are big. Certainly Riggs has a effective hero moment. Bit cheesy, but I liked it. And the closest the movie probably comes to that kind of like Die Hard feels. And it has a big action sequence, and then it becomes just two characters fighting, and it becomes just, all the big action is stripped away, and it's just a raw fight between two characters. That really fucking plays in Captain America Civil War, because we understand, not just because it's a franchise, but because of the movie itself, we understand why these characters are fighting, and it adds stakes as such. We don't really understand in Lethal Weapon why these two characters are having a karate contest in the rain, and it's probably not actually karate. Apologies, but
no,
you know what I mean.
The reason you can't pin it down, Chris, is because there are something like 6 different martial arts forms used throughout that fight. The idea came to someone on set, I think, wouldn't have been on set because they hired all these specialists. The idea was, wouldn't it be cool if they used several different martial arts forms? So they brought in like 3 or 4 different experts in, like, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think maybe Muay Thai, Krav Maga, maybe, I don't know. Like there was a handful of martial arts forms used. So the reason you're like, karate? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like, you can't pin it down, is because it's multiple, which is why it's harder to sort of figure out. But let's call it karate. that's easier.
I think that is easier, and that's why you don't care because we just don't know. We don't know why they're fighting.
Yeah, and the worst part is I've just looked in just to double check, just in case we missed like a line that explains that they've got history. The movie's best description of these two's, history with each other is they somehow knew each other briefly in the war, but they never really had close contact because they went down two different paths. Specifically, Joshua went down the Shadow Company path, which is the group that are doing all these crimes, all these, vague drug-related crimes that they're covering up. So they don't even have personal history. And here's the thing, right? Okay, you don't want them to have personal history because that seems too coincidental, right? Both these guys went to war. What are the odds they were close and had a personal beef, right? It seems tenuous, right? So I get the screenwriter's desire to... I say the screenwriter, Shane Black. I understand his desire not to... do that because that does feel a bit like convenient. But why don't we just make them juxtapose ideologically then? Why don't we establish Riggs is really proud of his service to the point that he's outraged at the way these guys have turned their training into profit? He's disgusted, like to his core, at what Joshua stands for in a way that is different to just police officer wanting to stop crime. Make it really personal. Make it you are a disgrace to the uniform you wore. Make Riggs full on saluting fucking the flag, land of the, home of the brave, land of the free, America, yay guy. Then you can justify this a bit better, I think. Because then it's an ideological difference. At the very least, do that. But they don't set that up really either. He's obviously got very conflicted feelings about his time at war. Therefore, you can't even sell that because of the way they've played it. So it's like there's just no reason for this to be a personal down in the dirt, having a punch up in the rain sort of situation. It's just so unearned. And I think as well, the other issue with the villains is neither of them really get to take center stage because the one that's on screen the most is a henchman. He's just a henchman. Gary Busey's character, Mr. Joshua, which, by the way, I've never been a big fan of Gary Busey. Sorry if there's Gary Busey fans listening. I think he's fine at best. I've always thought he was a bit of an overrated actor. I think the times he's come across the most interesting is because Gary Busey, as a person, is fucking a lunatic, and that's come across and made him seem like a very compelling actor. But I actually think he's just being Gary Busey a lot of the time. But anyway, that character is supposed to be, he's just the henchman. He's just the muscle, right? That would be like the ending of Die Hard being, John McClane versus just, the biggest of those henchmen, the guy with the long hair. But no, he dispatches that guy sort of 2/3 into the movie, and then it's, and then we're talking about Hans Gruber. Here's another area Die Hard succeeds over Lethal Weapon, the villain. Because, okay, so who's the guy above Mr. Joshua? He's called the General. What happens to him? He's stopped like 2/3 into the movie. Right, okay. Cool. And how much screen time does he get? Do we get some cool scenes between the heroes and him where they exchange dialogue and we get a sense of their rivalry? No. Oh. He's just sort of there because the script needs him to be. Oh. So, who's the bad guy? Well, we'll go with the henchman guy. Okay. Anything more interesting than that?
Why?
They're gonna fight a henchman? Yeah. Okay. Because reasons. Because crime. He did crime. He did a crime, Chris. He did a crime. That's the reason. So yeah, and while I understand, what actually would have made more, what would have been a bit more sense? That it would have been Murtaugh and Joshua fighting.
Yeah.
Joshua threatened his daughter, kidnapped his daughter, killed his friend's daughter.
Maybe he, rather than that shot at the end where they both kill him is fucking spectacular.
Yeah,
and obviously
you keep that
the shooting range and stuff like that. But
you wouldn't lose that for the world.
A big theme of the movie has been is, you know, Riggs telling him you gotta kill sometimes, you gotta do it. Like the notion of them fighting and Riggs on the sideline being like, you could end this, he hasn't even got a gun, you've got a gun, just shoot him, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then maybe him going, and then he's about to shoot him, and Riggs is like, no, actually, you know what, this guy deserves to go to jail. You were right. We shouldn't kill. And then like he goes to take the gun anyway, and they both fucking kill him.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the stuff that really works, mostly from the first half of the movie, because I'm not really into much of that stuff from the ending, unfortunately. That last like third of the movie, the last act, basically, just doesn't... I don't mind... I think the desert stuff is pretty good, but after that falls apart and they get kidnapped, my brain just is like, what am I watching, and why do I care, like, about any of it? Like, it really does turn off. Obviously, the very, very end, the scene where he comes round... and he has the dog, and we see Riggs sort of coming out of his funk. That's a lovely scene. I love that to bits. And I do enjoy them shooting Joshua. Those two moments are great. But most of the stuff that I love from this movie is from the first sort of 2/3. So, I mean, even the opening itself, the juxtaposition of Jingle Bell Rock and this tragic figure of this woman before her fall. And I wonder what I did right, actually. I said I would talk about positives, but... So the fall, as I mentioned earlier, is shot really artfully, and it's beautifully done. And, you know, with the song, the way the song choices work and the juxtaposition, it's just brilliant. And then she falls, and it's, like, really tragic. And then as she hits the car... the ugliest giant clip art text saying Lethal Weapon hits the screen, and it's fucking awful. It's like something from Word 1995, but it's like before that, like it's the 80s. I don't know who approved that text. It's the most hideous thing I've ever... The 80s, I guess, approved that text, but fucking hell.
And like you say, it really does, like, take you out of such an atmospheric opening. Yeah. Like you say, it's so artfully done, and it comes out and it's jingle bells, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is, because I'd googled before starting to watch it, is Lethal Weapon a Christmas movie, and I saw a few articles that were like, Die Hard gets all the chat, but we should be talking about Lethal Weapon, and,
right.
and like another one was like, Lethal Weapon is the Christmas action movie Die Hard wants to be, and it starts with Jingle Bell Rock, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is a Christmas movie. And then we just, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Dan. We see a lot of breasts, and I'm like, well, it's not your daddy's Christmas movie, is it? Like, God, okay. Right, yeah. And
I should clarify the girl is partially nude during that sequence, which is what Chris is referring to. If anyone hasn't seen it recently, and they're wondering, when do you see a lot of breasts? that's.
Yeah, and look, like, they are, you know, I'm not trying to be weird here, but I think you can't talk about that sequence without acknowledging the fact that it feels like a very conscious choice for them to be like, let's put a lot of boobs in this opening sequence.
I don't know. I kind of thought that the idea was to set up the tone that this is like a movie for grown-ups. So that was, you know, just start with
that's what I mean.
Because it's the only scene in the rest of the movie with any nudity in it, and it is just the one. It's the one girl. It's the one girl who is partially naked and quite a tragic figure in the sequence. So on this occasion, because of how well it's shot, I kind of felt like it was like sort of an artful choice to try and make it like tragic, more tragic than it already was.
That's the conscious decision to show the boobs, like to set up that it's an older movie, to set up like I say, that it's not your daddy's Christmas movie,
right.
You know, there's adult themes.
Yes. Yeah. But that fucking text. Again, fire the editor, fire whoever chose that font. It's horrible. It's grim. It's gross. And I don't know. Yeah, as I said earlier, the 80s chose that font, I guess, but like it's awful, and it really does stand out. It's not very timeless. It's very of its time, and it aged horribly. And then obviously we go straight into like setting up the contrast between our heroes' lives. I mentioned the scene earlier, but the scene where it's just, you know, Murtaugh waking up on his birthday with his family and all that stuff. It's just brilliant. It's all really well done. And when you contrast that to the opening and how we're introduced to Riggs. Man, like Riggs buying drugs,
trying to buy the 100 grams worth of drugs, but not understanding when they say 100 and starting to put the bills down, and then it turns out it's a bust, and there's a shootout amongst Christmas trees, which is fun. And the very last thing we'll cover before we get into trivia, by the way, is the question of, is it a Christmas movie? We'll come back to that. So yeah, I think, it's certainly a really great opening, third of the movie is introducing these two characters and showing you what they're like, and you understand who they are really quickly. That's fantastic. And then how they meet is brilliant. I love that it's, he looks like such a burnout that Murtaugh assumes he's not a cop. So when he sees him handling his gun in the police station, he doesn't think that's a cop checking his weapon. He thinks that's a crook that snuck a weapon into our office. Gun, and he dives at him, and then he gets immediately his one weight used against him. He gets thrown to the ground. Riggs points his gun at him, and they're like, "Yeah, meet your new partner." It's look cheesy, yes, but really fun. Tick, yes, please.
Just before the Christmas movie, and I don't know if this intrudes on Triv at all, and if it does, it can wait. But so now I've seen this.
Mm-hmm.
Is my memory right that basically the first episode of the TV series is this entire first movie? Is that correct?
That's my memory of it. But I haven't seen that series since it aired, so I'd have to look back. But yeah, the basic crime they're solving is I think it was a young girl jumps to her death and they solve it. But that's as far as my memory goes. Lethal Weapon TV series. So what year was that? It was 90. It was 2016. First episode. It doesn't clarify what the crime was in the pilot. That's annoying.
I seem to remember as well. I might be wrong here, but I seem to remember the sort of the circumstances in which his wife died became a bit of the part of the mythology of the show. Does that happen in the movie franchise?
I will not say.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh wait. So in terms of you mean when you say hit? Okay, you're talking about the whether it comes back that Riggs' wife was murdered by a criminal or in some later case.
Yeah. How she was murdered and
right.
Yeah.
No, I won't answer that question because I think that would be theoretically whether it is or isn't handled would be spoilers for the subsequent films. Fair but yes, that is a factor in the series. To give him an ongoing motive, his wife's death in the series was absolutely played as a question mark accident murder to give the character a bit of motivation to keep going, despite being a little bit unhinged, to say the least. Whether they do that in the movies or not, I won't give away.
Okay, fair enough.
The jumper scene, oh my god, so iconic. I don't know if you recall this from your watch through, Chris. But the scene where he goes up, there's a guy that's threatening to jump, and we demonstrate Riggs's very lax attitude to his own life during that sequence when he handcuffs himself to the guy threatening to jump. Says, "Go on then, jump," and then controls the jump so that they land on the big balloon thing that they whatever you want to call it, that sort of landing cushion thing. You know what I'm talking about. That they hit. It's an incredible sequence, right?
Yeah, it's brilliant. There is a slight problem with scenes like that because obviously in Yes Man, Jim Carrey talks a guy down by singing "Jumper" by Third Eye Blind at them. So it's kind of hard. Do you know what I mean? Can any scene like that top that? I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. But still great. As a great second place in terms of scenes like that, sure. I would say.
I have nothing to say about
it. With all the lies that we've been living in. You know the scene I'm talking about, yeah?
I do. I remember.
You know the song. It's in your head all day.
I've seen the movie.
Wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. Get ready to hum that later. Cut ties with all the lies that you've been living in.
How you feeling? You alright?
Tired.
Yeah,
very tired, Dan.
Yeah, for context, Chris obviously stayed up late watching to fit the film in. Watched it until, as he said earlier, like 2-3 a.m. and then was presumably up at 7 a.m. in order to do this. So before presumably either heading to work or getting ready for his holiday. I don't know which you're up to today, but.
I'm working all day doing the play this evening. Yeah, no, but anyway, I feel like we talked about that because if listeners are bored, if listeners are like, you're doing a play, we fucking get it. It's because of the condensed nature in which we've recorded these episodes. Apologies. That the jumping scene is done really well because they really do hide the bouncy castle. That's probably not the technical term for it.
No, I don't know what the word for those is, but it's those big giant inflatables when someone when they put under whenever someone's threatening to jump. I've seen them before. They do exist. They are real, but I don't know what you call it.
No, I don't know either. But it's really like it's effective. Like the fact that they've brought that in is really well hidden. So that when they jumped, I was like, what the fuck? Like I didn't expect him to die, but I was like surprised by that scene.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it's also it does do a good job of showing you, and then that showing you what his mental state is, and then it's immediately followed by the scene where, do you want to die? Murdoch says to Riggs, and Riggs shows him the bullet, and that's a really great scene. Then that's immediately followed
which is another
by
scene that.
Go on.
Yeah, no, you go. No, I was just saying that's that scene in the abandoned restaurant or whatever, whatever it is meant to be. That place is a good example of what I was talking about earlier. Like, do you know what I mean? That you could take that scene and put it on a stage, like easily. Like with the acting, the dialogue,
Yeah. And then obviously we then go into the sequence where they go after the guy they think might have been involved, and they end up killing him. That's when you get to that whole, give me anyone you didn't kill, or whatever that line is. And then we have this great little sequence that I always really like, which is them sort of they bond at dinner. Then he comes and wakes up in the morning with a coffee, and then they go out. They do the shooting, which is a fun little rivalry thing, where they're comparing their ability to shoot well while they're talking. But the whole time, all three of those scenes are happening. There's this niggling doubt. They think they got their guy, but they're not sure. And it's kind of the turning point of the movie. It's about 55 minutes in, like an hour into the hour and 45 minutes, and it's the moment they realize that maybe there's more to the murder than they thought. And that's when they start digging in, and that's when they get to, like, it really starts heating up. Like, the guy gets murdered, they go confront the guy. One of the guys they're trying to interview gets murdered, then they go and confront the dude whose daughter died, and then it all sort of comes out, and that's where we end up in the sort of where the movie starts barreling towards its end through all those different set pieces we talked about earlier. But like that whole sequence when they're bonding plus having doubts about the guy they killed being the real guy is incredible. It's a really, really good sequence because it's doing so much, because it's telling us a lot about the two characters while also, progressing the plot, but also giving us a reason for these two guys to be pushing to solve this. So yeah, I brilliant. I really, really liked it. I still think this is a movie people should watch. Even though as I said, the last act is full of problems that we've talked about. It's brilliantly done. It's great, brilliantly directed by Richard Donner. The music's great. The acting's great. There's a bunch of really fun sequences. The dialogue's fun. The action isn't terrible, even when it doesn't have stakes. Yeah. So I'm ending the general discussion on thumbs up, watch the movie. And now we come to the big question, Chris, before we hit the triv. Do you think it's a Christmas movie?
No, sorry. I think it's just set at Christmas.
Agreed. I don't know what I don't know what the defining factor is. I don't know if it's that Christmas is more of an integral part of Die Hard, in that like it's things like it because it's set on specifically Christmas Eve. It's about getting home to his kids for Christmas in a way. There's the sequence where he dresses the guy up as Santa and sends him down. Christmas feels more baked into the fabric of Die Hard, whereas this movie happens to be set at it, I think.
There's way more iconography of Christmas in Die Hard. There's, like you say, there's the ho ho ho. There's the, all of that sort of stuff.
The movie is set at a Christmas party. Actually, we should clarify as well. Die Hard is set at a Christmas party. Yeah, the movie's
set at a Christmas party, and like this, the opening sequence feels very Christmassy, and there are, there's Christmas paraphernalia throughout the movie, but not to the same extent as Die Hard. And I think they don't. If they really, in a way, because they do the friendship coming together quite early. And don't get me wrong, it's still bantery after that, and it's still, you could argue that's the right decision for the movie. You could, but because they do that, because the film isn't one big journey to these two people realizing that they're different, but that they care about each other and they truly are partners. And then he gets invited round for Christmas dinner, and it's a big moment. But that moment at the end, of course he's going to go to Christmas dinner. He's been a just regular dinner, and he saved the daughter's life. It doesn't feel like the Christmas story style thing of two characters, coming together, even though they're, two characters that start off opposing. It doesn't necessarily, I think, thematically feel as Christmassy as Die Hard does.
Yeah, I would agree. And this obviously starts a trend with Shane Black as a screenwriter, where every movie he worked on, not every, but a huge number of the movies he worked on following this also end up being set at Christmas. It becomes a weird little trend.
My favourite
My
favourite one being Iron Man 3, that is just inexplicitly set at Christmas for no real reason.
Yeah, Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys. Yeah, he really does enjoy just setting a movie at Christmas. At one point we will cover Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on this, because for me,
that's a great movie,
incredible movie, and like you can really see actually how Lethal Weapon is a creative stepping stone on Shane Black's route to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Like, I really think this is like a slightly more commercially friendly film, probably because Richard Donner didn't love some of the more violent and dark elements of the original draft of Lethal Weapon, which we'll get to in the triv. And, sanded off some of those edges to make it more commercially viable. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, because it's both written and directed by, it is truly a Shane Black movie in every sense, and therefore it's a more pure version of what this is trying to be, I think. So I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and we will come back to that. So yeah, we'll definitely come back to that. But yeah, Shane Black has a weird history. So like last week when you said, "Is it a Christmas movie?" and I think my answer literally was, "It's a Shane Black movie." What do you think? But yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think there is a weird line to be drawn between Christmas movie and set at Christmas, and I don't think Die Hard leaps over that line thoroughly into the territory of like an elf or whatever, but I think Die Hard does a little more than Lethal Weapon, and therefore ends up on the right side of that line. Lethal Weapon just doesn't quite do enough and falls a little short. I don't think it's massively short. I don't think it's a huge difference between Lethal Weapon and Die Hard in terms of their Christmassiness. There's a shootout in the Christmas trees here. The movie does end with the guy that's been alone being invited to dinner with a family for Christmas. Like this movie isn't not Christmassy, but it's just short of being a Christmas movie for me.
Yeah, I think it says a lot that it's one of the most hotly discussed elements of Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And other than those articles I found when searching it, and let's be honest, the problem with the internet is you can find something to argue. You know what I mean? Whichever side you fall on a debate, you can find something on the internet to help you.
You'll find someone backing up your opinion no matter what. Because it's smart for SEO. If you're going to write the Die Hard as a Christmas movie article, it's also smart to go, what if I write if the same website also hosts a Lethal Weapon as a Christmas movie article, then we're getting both audiences looking at articles we've written. So, yeah.
But fundamentally, no one's really talking about whether Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie. When you said the name of it last week, I was like, oh, okay, fine, yeah, I guess. Must be potentially Christmassy.
Well, it's been a little while since I've seen it. To be fair, and I think I remembered it being set at Christmas. I wasn't sure if it really counted or not, but I was like, well, let's find out. Make that the thing of this movie, of this film. I think this goes up on I want to say this is up on the 19th of December. So I kind of enjoy that this one that's coming kind of before Christmas, but not 19th of December. We're just a week out. This one doesn't need to be full on Christmas, but the next one, Chris, it's literally going to be going out around the 25th, 26th. So we'll come back to that. But the next one would be nice if it was a full on Christmas film.
You chose the first part of a quadrilogy. The fact that, just to finish my point, the fact that no one's talking, fundamentally, the fact that no one's really talking about whether Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie is the answer to the question.
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean?
It's not hotly debated the way Die Hard is. Yeah, agreed. I think Die Hard just gets over the line and this just falls short. That's my ruling for me.
Yeah,
but,
I think that's fair.
I think also whether a Christmas movie, honestly, a Christmas movie is whether it's a Christmas movie in your heart, and I think that's why Die Hard's such a hot debate, because Die Hard is such an integral part of Christmas to me because I watch it at Christmas. I make that choice, but there are other people who it doesn't make them feel Christmassy at all. It's not a tradition, and therefore they feel very differently about it. So I think that very much comes down to personal preference, because for some people it's not just about is it set at and involving a bunch of Christmas elements. Although I think we used that as part of our argument for why Die Hard was a Christmas movie when we talked about it, when we reviewed it initially. But at the end of the day, you can Control F on the Die Hard script, type in Christmas, and see an absolute boatload of stuff that's related to Christmas. That does help. But at the end of the day, it has to be like, does it feel Christmassy to you? And Die Hard feels Christmassy to me. Lethal Weapon seems to be set at Christmas and has vibes of it at the beginning and the end, but doesn't ever really commit to it enough to be considered a Christmas movie in my book. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of Die Hard. You can watch it any time of the year. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas you never, well, we did because we recorded in advance that year, but you never watch the Santa Claus in July, do you?
No. I suspect we watched the Santa Claus in September last year. September, October would be my guess.
Yeah, it was around then, wasn't it? Like, yeah, it was. We'd be able to find out because it was around, if not the day of the Queen's funeral, I believe. We did the Santa Claus first episode, I think.
Is that right?
Is
that how we spent? So 19th. There you go, 19th of September. So yeah, I was right. September. There you go. Okay, cool. So let's do the thing, Chris. Say the thing that you say.
Let's triv it up.
We're gonna give you some trivia. So here we go with some triv. Recent UCLA graduate Shane Black wrote the screenplay in mid-1985. His agent sent it to the producer Joel Silver, who loved the story and worked with Black to further develop the script. According to a 2016 interview with Joel Silver, Ridley Scott was actually the first choice to direct the film, but due to Scott's recent tensions with Warner Brothers during the making of Blade Runner, the studio refused to offer him the job. So yeah, the thing that could have been... I'm not sure I would have liked... Would I have wanted to see that version? The Ridley Scott version of this movie? Probably not.
Nah.
I think Richard Donner was the right director for this. But so the first draft of this script was darker. Both men leads had flashbacks about their time in Vietnam. Murtaugh at one point remembered accidentally killing a young soldier with his bare hands during military training before he even went to war. Riggs remembering what a killing machine he was and how many people he killed while working as an assassin, like for the CIA, madness. The script also had a backstory for Joshua, who, like Riggs, also worked at the CIA. He was also like an assassin in Vietnam. And he remembered all the things he did in war. But Donner thought that no matter how many drafts Shane Black wrote, it was always still too dark for his taste. So he brought in Jeffrey Boam. It's underlined, which makes it hard for me to tell where the characters are. Boam, Boam. For some uncredited rewriting, basically, this guy came in for. He's not credited as being the writer of the script, but he did do some smoothing out of the edges. This is what I talked about earlier. He sort of added a bit more humor into the script. He changed a few of the scenes. So, for example, there was a scene. Now, the scene was eventually deleted entirely, but there's a scene in the early part of the movie that was going to introduce Riggs differently, where Riggs stops a school shooter, a school sniper in this case. So there's going to be a sniper shooting at kids from a distance, and it was going to be, it's going to end with a kid being sort of carried away on a gurney. It was like, potentially dead. And Riggs stopped the guy in the original draft, not with a gun, but with a rocket launcher, which is insane. Imagine just blowing up the guy. So almost all of the parts of the script that Black worked on were too graphic, too bloody.
a bit too RoboCop, I guess, for Richard Donner's tastes. And he took things out. Now, for a little while, he tried to retool that scene to make it less violent, so he had it so no kid ends up getting hurt. He changed it so Riggs just shoots the guy instead of blowing him up with a rocket launcher. There were a bunch of changes. They still couldn't make the scene work, and it was eventually cut all together. But is that not the most insane thing? Imagine if that scene had made it to this movie. I don't know how I would have felt about that at all.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's madness.
Yeah, very strikes me as just come out of uni, edgy, writer. Yeah. I'm gonna fuck shit up in Hollywood. My first movie's gonna have a school shooting, dead kids,
for sure.
Vietnam flashbacks. Because I'm an edgelord. He was a 1980s version of an edgelord. He would have loved Rick and Morty. That's all I'm saying. And the work of director. What's his face? Oh God, Zack Snyder. He'd have loved Rick and Morty and Zack Snyder if young Shane Black had, if he'd have been born years later. That's what he'd been into. Christopher Reeve, who had obviously worked with Richard Donner in Superman, was actually one of the first choices to play Martin Riggs, but turned it down. I think that's for the best. I like Christopher Reeve very much. Extraordinarily talented actor. I don't think there's any version of casting, and we'll go through a couple of other alternatives in a second, but I'll say this before we get to them. There's no alternate casting for this movie other than for Joshua that I would care to see. And that's just because I don't care for Gary Busey.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so let's quickly run through these. So apparently Shane Black wanted William Hurt to play Riggs. The studio were concerned that he was too obscure to be the lead in the movie. Other names for Riggs that were considered: Pierce Brosnan, Jeff Goldblum, Michael Biehn, Michael Douglas, Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone, Patrick Swayze, and of course, as I mentioned earlier on, Bruce Willis, all considered. I don't like any of those. Sorry.
Nope, I think this is one of those films where it's like, it's these two. I don't want to see it being two other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's these two.
Yep, agreed. Other options for... it's weird here, actually. I don't have a list of alternatives that I can see for Murtaugh. I'm just looking now.
Is the previous list definitely not both of them or anything like that, then?
No, that's just Riggs. Maybe they just always were going to use Danny Glover. That's crazy. Because usually when there's a big list like that for one character, there's a big list like that for the other. We do have some alternate casting for the other roles, though. So Mr. Joshua was at one point looked at by Willem Dafoe, James Woods, Christopher Walken, Keith Carradine, and Scott Glenn. Now, the one that strikes me there is Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe would have been a great Mr. Joshua, I think. I would have enjoyed that. I think he'd have brought more character and more thing to that character. But again, could this just be biased because I'm not personally a fan of, of Gary Busey? So,
yeah. Where does that come from, Dan? Actually, we haven't got time. Let's delve into you and.
No,
Gary Busey
I just don't. I've never seen a performance of his I've liked. Is where that comes from, and I don't understand. I just think he's a really fucking weird guy, and I think he's gotten away with it for years because he plays weird guys, and therefore it's like, isn't he great at playing weird guys? I'm like, no, he's just a fucking weird guy. That's not acting. He's a fucking lunatic. Like, you listen to him in an interview and be like, oh, he's just like that. Like, it's not acting. it's I'm not a big fan at all. Right. So other options for General McAllister, who's quote unquote the villain. We barely see him in the movie, but Lee Marvin, Bruce Dern, Richard Jordan, James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones would have been pretty interesting. Peter Boyle and Robert Duvall. In the end, we got what's his name? Oh, it was right in front of me 2 seconds ago. Mitchell Ryan, who does a good job. So I don't really care who got that role. He's such a small part in the movie anyway. It was apparently casting director Marion Doherty's first suggestion to pull Mel Gibson and Danny Glover together. And obviously, while that was all being negotiated, it's when a lot of those other names were discussed, and maybe even potentially some of those people came in and auditioned, but the casting director was so determined that this was the this was the way to go, that they actually paid and arranged for Gibson to fly into LA from his home in Sydney to meet Glover, who got flown in from Chicago. And then they got them into the same room and made them read let them read the script together, like read through the script together. And apparently that was really helpful, and to the point where Mel Gibson turned down roles in The Fly and The Untouchables in order to do this movie. So it was quite a good,
proven to be the right decision based on the fact that it became a full-blown franchise.
100%. The Fly is a classic, but it's not. No, you're 100% right. This was the move. And credit to Marion Doherty for whatever magic foresight she had to bring these people into the room together and make that happen, because 100% the right cast. They signed on by early spring in 1986. They flew home to pack and then returned to Los Angeles to begin an intensive 2-month and physical training preparation sort of camp almost, put together by Bobby Bass, who was the stunt coordinator. He planned and supervised physical conditioning, weight workouts, weapon handling, safety. He also used his own military experience to bring a greater depth of understanding to the Riggs character. Danny Glover's character... this isn't the same. Oh yeah, here you go. Danny Glover and Mel Gibson both were also shadowed. They shadowed LA Police Department officials before doing the movie. And Richard Donner consulted with the LA County Sheriff's Department to ensure an authentic portrayal of the police force. Now, in my experience, and there are videos covering this online, back in the day, if you wanted to do a movie about the police, it was kind of understood you had to work with the police about it. But it turns out, in years since, it's become clear that it's just so they could control the message of how they're depicted in the movies. The reason there were so many Yay, Police Are Heroes movies, especially from this era, is because the police were directly pushing for that, specifically in LA. So we'll move on, because that's not great that they wanted influence on these scripts. But anyway. Danny Glover's character is 50 years old in the movie, but Glover was only about 40 when he played the role. Mel Gibson's character is supposed to be 38, but Mel Gibson was only 30. So both actors playing about 10 years-ish older than they were at the time. Weird choice. I shrug.
That is a strange choice. And also, I did love, because obviously... I think everyone involved is in this all the way through, isn't it? I believe Richard Donner directed all 4 movies, and the producing team is the same as far as I can tell.
Did Richard Donner direct the last one? I'm pretty confident he directed the next 2, but I don't know about the 4th one. Let's find out.
I thought he did, but double check. But my point is, I love
You're right,
like that first scene where Danny Glover is in the bath and everyone's taking a mick out of how grey he is. I'm watching that from the point of view of my view going, well, he and everyone else sticks around for 4 more movies quite a few years apart, so if he's too old now,
and that is obviously
too old for this shit.
The famous line from the movie is, I'm too old for this, which is quite funny, considering that there's talk of there being another one even now. There's always talk of there being a new Lethal Weapon. But to clarify, despite the popular misconception, Murtaugh never actually says, I'm getting too old for this shit in the movie. He simply says, I'm too old for this shit. He doesn't say, I'm getting too old for this shit, which implies he's already too old. But apparently he says, I'm getting too old for this shit in the sequels. But the idea that he keeps saying that, keeps getting older, and that they keep making these movies says a lot. It's quite fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Hollywood city officials hung their Christmas decorations on Hollywood Boulevard a few months early in order for them to shoot the scenes in this movie, particularly the action scenes towards the end of the movie. So there you go. Jackie Swanson performed. Jackie Swanson is the actress who plays the young girl that dies at the beginning. This is incredible. She performed the high fall on her own. She was trained by legendary stuntman Darl Robinson, but also the stunt was done using an airbag covered with a life-sized painting of the driveway and cars, which acted like a sort of background miniature. And it visually blends in with the real scene. This allowed the editor to hold on the shot until
just before she makes contact with the airbag for realism. Absolute credit to her as an actress for doing that. I, as a person who's afraid of heights, would not do that. Nowhere near. You couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me enough money in the world. I'd be like, get a stunt person in, please.
Fair.
I'm not.
I forgot you're not big on heights.
Yeah. I don't have a huge list of like fears. Not too bothered by mice, snakes. You know, the sort of common fears people have don't bother me too much. But yeah, heights, not me, not my thing.
Fair.
And therefore not a huge fan of flying. You'll be shocked to hear. In the scene where Riggs is contemplating,
you don't have a big flight coming up, eh?
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, a good 24-hour journey. Yep, door to door. Love it. We'll come back to that at some point in a future podcast and explain what that's regarding. In the scene where Riggs is contemplating suicide, there is an actual bullet blank in the chamber, which Mel Gibson was pointing at his head, thinking that it would allow for a greater sense of portraying the scene realistically and dramatically. But while bullet blanks don't fire live rounds, the ejection of air and debris from the gun barrel can and have fatally injured people at very close range. So this was a real close call. It was a very stupid thing to do, and we're very lucky there wasn't an accident there. Yeah, silly. These things happen though, as we found out, much to everyone's sadness just a year or so ago. Yeah, less said about that the better, I guess. Yeah, this is one of my favourite pieces of trivia we maybe ever done, because this is so silly. To add tension between actors, the director told Gary Busey and Mel Gibson it was the other one who kept eating the last waffle.
That is fucking brilliant. And was he eating the waffle?
Quick, Mel's coming.
Rolling
Quick,
in
give me the
waffles.
last waffle. Or it was Gary Busey. I'm doing this for the movie, not just because I wanted to eat a waffle.
Yeah. He just likes waffle. That's what that trip is.
Richard Donner, famous waffle eater, waffle lover, in fact. Brilliant. So, yeah. An alternate opening and ending to the film were shot and have been included on... Weirdly, they were included on the Lethal Weapon 4 DVD. I don't know why. But the alternate opening included Riggs drinking alone in a bar, accosted by a couple of thugs who wanted money. He claims all of it was in his bank. The thugs sort of tell him not to fuck with them. They attack, and he easily subdues them. And then he gets given a free bottle of booze in the bar in exchange for never returning. So yeah, another attempt at doing an intro for Riggs that didn't quite work. Still a bit too dark. So again, Richard Donner had it changed, and we ended up with the scene where he sort of gets up in his trailer instead, and then we led to the proper intro, which is the gunfight at the place that sells the Christmas trees. My brain kicking in eventually. The alternate ending was also too dark to be included, and it featured Riggs and Murtaugh saying goodbye to one another, and then Riggs basically being depressed and alone in his camper van, in his trailer, and not actually going around and seeing him for Christmas. So he's on his own for Christmas. That is sad.
Yeah, that's a much worse ending.
Yeah, it is. So this movie is dedicated to Dar Robinson, the stuntman that we referred to earlier, who died in a motorcycle accident shortly after principal photography was finished. So if anyone wonders why that name appears at the end and who it's dedicated to, that's why. We salute the work, and yeah, always sad to hear why they do that. When they need to do that. So this movie is a weird one because I'll pull up its box office figures in just a second. I should have done that before we started, but this is an interesting one because many speculate that this movie was not particularly likely to do well, basically. It hadn't had a lot of promotion. A lot of money was not spent
putting it on like bus ads and all that stuff, right? But then Siskel and Ebert reviewed the movie, and specifically Roger Ebert played a huge role in this movie's success. He gave it such an emphatic review. Ebert said it thrilled him from beginning to end, that it was both a great action film and a well-written drama. He gave it 4 stars, and he gave it a written review also. And because people really listened to Ebert, and even though there wasn't much awareness of the movie, not, again, as I mentioned, no ad space and all that stuff, people went to see it based on Ebert's very, very rave review. And that is something that could not possibly happen today. But yeah, the movie ended up going on to make $120 million in the box office on a budget of where is its budget? Oh, I don't have its budget, Chris. Oh, let's find out. Lethal Weapon budget. $15 million. So it cost $15 million to make, and it returned 120. And that really is 15 million to 120, because it sounds like they spent basically nothing on marketing. Maybe 5 million, little bits of print and stuff. So yeah, that is a proper return on investment. No wonder it became a big franchise. And yeah, I don't think there's a single influencer or reviewer or critic today that would have such an influence on a movie's sales.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But partly because, it's so different now with, things like YouTube, and the film critics are no longer exclusive to, newspapers and stuff like that anymore.
Yeah, agreed. And there's so many as well. There's so many different voices out there. It's like, there's no one voice that everyone is listening to. Or at least, a big enough percentage of the audience to make an impact. So, it's everyone's favourite time of the week, Chris. It's Cars Exist.
Meow.
So, this is the only film in which Riggs drives... Oh, by the way, for listeners, Cars Exist is a segment that exists because when we started this, I noticed a weird trend where people would list the kind and make and models of the cars in the movie in the trivia like that was anything of interest. And I found it so funny that people would go to and they would always be so specific, not just the kind of car, but the make, the model, the year, all that stuff. And sometimes it would unfold into even weirder trivia. And then we'd occasionally come across a movie where no one did that for, and I would have to go to the Internet Movie Car Database, which is a real website, where you could look up a movie and see all the cars in the movie listed, and a bunch of people debating which make, model, year, and you can figure it all out. It's a really good website. All of the ones you're about to hear are not from... I did not need to visit the Internet Movie Car Database. Someone took the time to put this information in the IMDb trivia for this movie. Not a specific car-based website. These are in the IMDb trivia, which a lot of them are, but I really think it's important I clarify this one is, because this sounds like it came from the Internet Movie Car Database because of how specific it is. So, this is the only film in which Riggs drives a GMC R30 crew cab pickup truck. In the sequels, he drives the GMC extended cab pickup truck. The extended cab was introduced for the Chevrolet and GMC pickup trucks in April 1987, 1988 model year, for the Chevrolet ones, and for the GM ones, GM pickup trucks, 1973 to 1987 generation, included the 1988 to 1991 crew cab and utility models. They were only available in regular and crew cab styles before the introduction of the GMT 400 platform for the 1988 model year. What fucking nonsense is this? Production commenced in April 87. I could barely read that. What madness. It's also worth noting that Murdoch's car is a 1986 Oldsmobile Delta 88 Royale, and his license plate is noted here as being E641985.
Cool. I don't know about this segment.
But also, Chris, we got the sister segment to Cars Exist. Oh, that's right. This week we are doing Guns Exist. The rifle Riggs used
in the desert. Riggs uses in the desert is a $10,000 Heckler & Koch PSG-1 marksman rifle made in West Germany. At the time, it was one of only 2 specimens in civilian hands in the United States. Producers wanted the cutting-edge firearms in the movie, and the PSG-1 was borrowed from Bumblebee Wholesale, a famous gun store in Los Angeles. The rifle normally comes with its own unique tripod to rest on, but had not yet shipped. So the gun prop master welded, that makes way more sense, the Harris bipod on. The production had to pay the full value of the rifle, and Riggs also uses a Beretta 92F in the film, and not weirdly, but kind of just another link between this movie and Die Hard. In this film, that very prop then went on to become the prop that John McClane would use in Die Hard. The gun has, of course, since been retired. And then Murtaugh's gun is a classic Smith & Wesson Model 19. So that's another thing this movie shares with Die Hard, Chris. That prop gun. There's so weird. The same producer, the same music. The cast obviously were nearly role reversed. That prop gun. The whole debate about whether it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, it echoes. You feel it. You feel the Die Hardness of it all. And I suppose if I now watch Die Hard, I'd feel it in reverse. Like, yeah, for sure. They definitely films cut from the same cloth for sure.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is Die Hard technically comes second, I believe. This is 87, and that Die Hard was 88. Is that right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. This one came first. But it's clear they were being developed very closely together, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So there you go. That's the Triv. We did it, Chris. The question now is where are we going next week? Now, for those who don't know and just jumped in on the Lethal Weapon episode, this season... So we usually do a trilogy per year. And the first film of this series was arguably the start of... Well, no, it is the start of a trilogy, but... I decided not to take us in that direction. I kind of lightly teased that I might go for the trilogy and then chose not to. And we have kept that up so far. And Chris nearly backed me into a corner with Shaun of the Dead as a choice, because we were coming up to Christmas and it's like, how many Christmas trilogies are there? Now we've already covered the Santa Claus trilogy. And I came up with Lethal Weapon because it's kind of a Christmas movie and could arguably a trilogy. Because the way this works, we should clarify actually as well. I choose the movie one week, and then Chris chooses the movie the next. If you're brand new, so now it's Chris's choice, and he can either. I
don't think we, as discussed, we've done Indiana Jones, which is 4 movies. So you can do a we could do a quadrilogy 100%. Instead of a trilogy. Yeah, that's fine.
But we refer to it as a trilogy. But yeah, absolutely. If the movie had 4, although because the 4th movie of this series is made a little bit separate, I'd be happy to just do the 3 the same way we were going to. Just do the 3 for Indiana Jones, and then your completionist bone kicked in, and we ended up doing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, we'd never as yours probably would as well. So
so here we are. You could turn Lethal Weapon into this season's trilogy. Or you could commit to something different, but if you do commit to something different, are you going to do the same thing by choosing a movie that's arguably the start of a trilogy or not? Ball's in your court, Chris. What are we doing?
Well, there's also the added complication, of course, of Christmas.
And this episode will be going up around the 25th. So
yeah. And it's just like, is there any way to continue the bit? The choice is fundamentally, we talked about Home Alone, so it's kind of like Home Alone or Lethal Weapon. But Home Alone for me, it's obviously it's really the difference between, say, Home Alone and this is Home Alone is 6 movies, and there's no real through thread. The cast changed, the creative teams changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
I knew you weren't going to be happy with considering that a true trilogy. I had a feeling that was going to be your thinking, but go on.
Yeah, because it's not, because there's 6 movies. Like I say, the creative teams change. It's not like Lethal Weapon, and at some point in this series, one of us has got to commit. So I'm doing a movie from a series that has 4 movies in, Dan. From a series where those 4 movies are all directed and produced by the same team. A series where the first movie has been spun off into another medium. A series where there starts with 2 people that are at loggerheads and then come together by the end with iconic performances. Of course, that performed by Martin Freeman and Mark Wootton. We're talking Nativity, baby.
Very good. Excellent choice. That's very, very good. Yeah, Nativity. I've only ever seen the first Nativity. That's
it's up to you whether you choose the second.
Yeah, are we going to be watching Christmas movies through January this year is now the situation I'm in. So we'll come back to that. But yeah, so we're at least doing the first Nativity, which I remember being delightful, but I've only ever seen it once. Will that remain the case? I don't know. We'll find out. So this is 2009's Nativity. This is definitely one of the more recent movies we've covered, but a fantastic call. Very, very well done. You should be proud of that choice.
Yeah, because I like to think as I was doing that, you were going, he can't have thought of a movie that fits the same criteria as Lethal Weapon so much. Because I also don't think you must have thought he's probably not going to choose Lethal Weapon 2 for the Christmas slot. So I like the idea that as I was saying all that, you were like, where is he possibly going with this?
That's exactly correct. Like literally like one hand on my head, sort of rubbing it, going, where's this going? Like, yeah, for sure, because you definitely did find a movie that could arguably be described. I mean, it's an even more impressive version of what I did last week, because I was pleased with Lethal Weapon as a choice because it could be described in a way that sounds a lot like Hot Fuzz, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've done that. We've kind of started doing that. Did that bit get introduced? Did you start doing that when you? With Clerk? No, I don't. I think it was the Hot Fuzz thing that introduced that added complex layer to this random theme that we're doing this year of constantly doing the.
We do have to commit to a trilogy at some point, so it's going to be interesting to see where that lies, who pulls the trigger, and also because the other thing that's interesting about this is next year we talked about for the next season. We talked about doing a whole series on sequels. And what I really enjoy is what we've created here is a situation where we're giving ourselves lots to... Because we only had just enough sequels to cover a whole season. But because we keep choosing the first movies...
I think we did have slightly more. I think there was about 14. I think one of us did. I
agree. 100%. I think it's right. There was a tiny bit of wiggle room in terms of stuff we could and could not choose. But now, Chris, we've given ourselves another 4 sequels we could now do next year. We could do Clerks 2, we could do Lethal Weapon 2, we could do Hot Fuzz. You know, we in the season of sequels...
Mate, 4 is ambitiously low, mate. I think the notion of us not stretching this shit out further than these 4 episodes is...
But here's the thing, though. But we have to pull the trigger at some point, Chris, unless we're saying we will commit to the trilogy for the last 3 episodes of the series.
No, we have to know. At some point, one of us has to pull the trigger. But, as you said at the beginning, you know, you put the ball in my court, and now the ball is in your court, my friend. Nativity 2, Dude, Where's My Donkey? That is your choice. It is up to you what you do with it next time.
But you know what's really frustrating about this, by the way? I said 2 years ago I'm really excited to do Muppets Christmas Carol, and then last year we couldn't do Muppets Christmas Carol because so I was going to do it one year, didn't quite fit it in. Can't remember what we chose instead, but we had another choice. I sucked it up and went, you know what? It's fine. We haven't done it in 2021. We'll do it in 2022. And in 2022, then we got sucked into the Santa Claus trilogy.
Because it aligned so perfectly that basically we could make
the new series.
We could make a trilogy go over Christmas.
So once again, I was like, I have to wait another year to do Muppets Christmas Carol. Then this year came along and this stupid fucking trilogy thing happened. And then I had to pick Lethal Weapon and not Muppets Christmas Carol. And now I have to wait until 2024 Christmas to arguably do Muppets Christmas Carol.
Well, unless you know because it won't be the next season won't be over Christmas, will it? So yeah,
no,
that's fair. But honestly, mate, when I was thinking about it, and I was like, I didn't want to do Home Alone. Also, if I'm honest, I introduced, and we will get to Home Alone at some point, but I introduced Home Alone to an adult friend who had never seen it, and it was quite a depressing experience. Like, when you're in a room with someone watching it for the first time, and it's like, is this as good as people remember? So I just didn't particularly want to do Home Alone, and I was trying to work out what to do. But Home Alone seemed like the choice, and then I was sat there, and I was just thinking about it, and I just suddenly went, I think there's 4 nativity movies. I was like, and that's a good, like, the parallels with the 2 leads to Lethal Weapon are there, and then
I think I will say that next year's trilogy is got to be settled. We already know what the next season's trilogy is going to be, because there is only one trilogy that's a sequel trilogy, and if we're doing a season of trequels. If we're doing a season of sequels, there is a film that was a trilogy that then had another trilogy after it. Now, admittedly, they are technically prequels, but I think prequel counts. Because we've got we could really go either way with that. Rewind Reviews, the prequel trilogy to Star Wars is obviously more, because everyone knows what we're talking about, is more in keeping with Rewind Reviews, but we could equally go the other way. We could go after. We could, but those are so recent. I don't know if they fit the
They also, I would argue, really don't hold together well as a concise trilogy of films either.
No. New. So yeah, so I think next year this sort of what the trilogy is settled. But like this year, like there are a lot of options, man. There's a lot of films, and also what I tell you what else I'm scared of is burning through all the first movies of trilogies and then limiting our number of trilogies we can do, because there are a lot of trilogies. I've got a handful of trilogies in my list. Some of which I'm like, I really will want to do that as a trilogy when we get there. So I really am. That's my fear. We've already taken the Cornetto trilogy and the Clerks trilogy off the table. I don't think we were ever necessarily going to do the Lethal Weapon films as a trilogy or a quadrilogy in this case. But there is a danger that we're going to step on some toes here of stuff we could potentially do.
Well, Dan, the ball is back in your court, my friend. If you want us to take no more trilogies off the table, Nativity 2, Dude, Where's My Donkey?
We'll see. Time will tell.
Let's talk Christmas in February.
Let's be still talking about Christmas in February, yeah.
And by the way, that would be, if we did that would be Nativity Rocks. Is the 4th film in that quadrilogy.
All right.
But again, you want to stop trilogies taking off the table.
Yeah. And also, I think at a certain point we just have to end this bit because it is getting silly. It's a snake eating its own tail. Look, it's just got to end at some point. We can't do this forever.
Yeah, but we're both fairly stubborn. So it has to end by one of us ending it.
Yeah, so I genuinely think I'm close to doing that. I'm not that stubborn. I'm already a bit tired of the bit, but we'll see.
Yeah, but you got 2 choices on how you end it. You either firmly end it by picking a standalone movie,
yes,
or you try and end it by picking the first part of a trilogy you genuinely want to do, but then there's the risk that I just won't pick the second film.
Yeah, or there's you pick a film and I just commit to that trilogy.
Yes, yeah. So you got 3 ways to end it.
No, I'm looking at my options right now, Chris, to be quite honest with you. But anyway, enough talk about the practicality of this podcast and the selection.
I think
process.
the best way for you to look at those options, Dan. Actually, I might be wrong. Hold on, let me just check one thing.
This is the man that yesterday said, I don't want to put this to...
No.
I keep trying to end this discussion, but Chris, literally yesterday was like, absolutely no tangents tomorrow, we just need to get on. Like, it's we're an hour and 50 in, I think. How is this still happening?
Yeah, because we're an hour and 40. Yeah, because my big thing was finishing by 9:30, and we're 9:40, 9:30, and we're at 9:30. I need to correct something though, Dan.
Yeah.
I keep saying that your choice is Nativity 2, Dude, Where's My Donkey?
That's the third one.
I need to correct myself. That's the third one. Your choice is Nativity 2, Danger in the Manger.
I might really go off piece and just choose like an Alvin and the Chipmunks sequel. Like Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked.
Mate, you want to go really off piece. You do have a 4th option to end this.
Go on.
You could pick Clerks 2 or Hot Fuzz or Lethal Weapon 2.
That's really good. All right. That's everything for this week. I'm calling it. Thanks everyone for listening. You get us in all the normal places. If you want to hear episodes of this a week early, you can go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where you can listen to episodes of Rewind Reviews 1 week ahead of their normal release. So our discussion of Nativity is already available to Patreons if you're listening to this via Spotify or iTunes or any of those platforms. If you're already listening to this on Patreon, then sorry, you have to wait a week. But you're already hearing this one a week early. So you're already ahead of those chumps that aren't giving us money. So chill your beans. The imaginary person that I'm having a debate with in my head. You can also support us by heading over to like the YouTube channel and subscribing and liking and commenting on videos there. You can of course help us by subscribing and reviewing on whatever the podcast platform of choice you use. You can support us by telling a friend, and you can support us of course by continuing to listen. That is enough. Please, doing that alone is amazing. So thank you all for doing that. We want to also of course thank those of you who've taken the time to support on the Patreon directly, because that is obviously, while I say it is more than enough to just keep listening, you know, also big salutes to those of you who have gone beyond that, whether it is leaving a review or paying money to get access to our Patreon, where we also have an exclusive podcast called Nothing But Lyrics, where we analyse the lyrics of a song and either try to decipher them, make fun of them, or sometimes both. And what I'm really enjoying, we're 5 episodes into that now. At the point of recording this, we've recorded 5 of those, and they have all been so different from each other. So do check that out. I think the best contrast is actually the 2 most recent ones. Like the tone shift from our discussion of You're Beautiful by James Blunt to Just by Radiohead. Remarkable. Hard to believe it's the same podcast between the 2. So yeah, please check it out. It's really fun. I'm really enjoying doing it. But that is everything for this week. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who ends this podcast.
I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Dillon.
And this review has been Rewound.